Hello and welcome to Class 10 of Sil 201, Intermediate Silhouettefx, with me, Ben Brownlee. And you will notice that we are not in Silhouettefx at the moment. That's because this class we're going to be looking at the interoperability functionality of Silhouettefx. So basically how we're able to bring in data from other applications and also how we can take out the data from Silhouettefx to various different places as well. And that's becoming increasingly rare in houses that do have Silhouettefx, that there isn't at least one seat of one of the Mocha family, whether that's Mocha or Mocha AE, even in there. And it's actually a great tool to use in conjunction with Silhouettefx to get us some really cool tracking data that otherwise we wouldn't be able to get. Because instead of working with a point tracker, Mocha has a planar tracker. Now this is actually different to the planar tracker that's built into Silhouettefx and works in a very different way, just from a basic maths point of view. So we can use it to speed up some of our roto work in Silhouettefx by using the tracking data from Mocha and then bringing that over. So let's take a look at our shot. We've seen this shot before. This is our shot we looked at in class 5 for the hands, and we're going to just add a bit of additions to this now. So what I want to do is I want to track the base of our box now. Now I'm not going to go through a big tutorial for Mocha for this. There are plenty of other resources available for that, including some FX PhD classes as well. But what I'm going to do here is actually first just define my plane at the bottom of the box here, and I will call this box bottom track. Just fit that there. It doesn't really matter that I've got a bit of the finger in there. Come in, I'm going to track perspective on this as well. And let's just track this backwards. So basically all I'm doing here is trying to get a good track for the bottom of our box here, just to save us a bit of time. And Mocha's planar tracker really, is actually very, very good at these sort of surfaces here. So I'm going to come up to my surface tool actually here and define the 4 points that we're going to be taking out as our data. Let's take out the edges of the box if I can find it, as close as I can get. Turn on my grid, zoom in here. Just basically to check through that what we're taking out isn't absolute nonsense data. So I'm using the grid here to just sort of line myself up on the barcode. Let's just have a little look through that. Zoom out a little bit. That's looking pretty good. Cool. All right. So once I've got that, I can now just start to take out that tracking data. So if I export out this tracking data here, we can come in and choose loads of different types of tracking data, but the one we want here is actually After Effects corner pin, which is corner pin data only, which supports Red Giant Warp and Mocha import. So we'll take that one there and we'll save this out. And we'll save this as box bottom track. Copy that there. I'll save that there. So let's now pop into Silhouettefx. And here we are in Silhouettefx. We've got our project pretty much how we left it. We've got a slight addition of this little finger here, which we'll look at a little bit later. But let's start up our another shape here, and we will call this box bottom. And we have actually called this package previously. So let's stick with package here. and we'll come into our tracker now. Cool, and under the tracker, we've actually got this lovely I/O here where we can import and export data. So we can take in tracking data from After Effects corner pin data. We can also bring in nuke trackers and shake as well. And if you do want to bring in tracking data from another application, there are ways of formatting into a way that Silhouettefx will understand. And that's in their simple format tracker file. And full details of that are in the manual. But for now, we've got our box bottom track here, which is our corner pin track. Let's open that up. And this gives us our 4 trackers. Let's check them out. Okay, not quite coming in exactly as expected. And the reason for that is probably, in fact, it's absolutely definitely, because if you cast your mind into the dim and distant past, we actually just sort of brought in our work area to start from frame 10. So whenever we bring in tracking data from Mocha, that always pops in at frame number 1. Simple fix, we just come in, select all of our points here, and just drag them over to where we need them to be. So no problems whatsoever, and then we can come back and then just set our work range yet again. And I think I'm still a frame off. Yeah, I am. I think I misjudged the frames I needed to take in from Mocha. But the point still stands. So we've got our 4 points here. And because we've got our 4 points, we can come into our package bottom here, make sure those are all selected, come back into our tracker, and we hit apply. And now our corner point tracking is applied to our active layer. So now if we take a look at our package bottom here, and we'll zoom out a little bit, you can see it's distorting in a weird and wonderful way, but let's hide our trackers here for a moment. But if I come in and draw my shape, would help if I turn the layer back on. There we go. Yeah, come in, draw my shape here, which is a square. Which is probably a good point to come in back here. Check out my shape and change my primitive size to, primitive type to B-spline in the prefs. We'll see why that is a bit later. And let's change this up again. And just reshape this. Quickly. There we go. Once we've got that going on, if our track is good, that should follow through. And it does. Cool. Let's turn on motion blur for that. Yeah. Cool, looking good. Excellent stuff. And I can then actually now get rid of these corner pins here. But say we didn't want to take corner pin data out. We wanted just to get a regular point tracker coming out. So for example, we wanted to try and track one of the fingers here, which is going to be actually rather tricky to do with our point tracker. Let's do this one. Left hand. Create a little tracker there. See what we can get done here. Oh dear. There's a large amount of motion blur going on, which is definitely not helping. So let's set our search size up. It's helped in that direction. Not really helped too much there. Or there. I think a set size is actually a bit too big and it's picking up the wrong one. So you can see actually it's really tricky getting a good point track going off on that one. And that's simply because there's so much motion blur going on. So we pop back into Mocha and we'll just hide this layer, turn off our grid for a moment and create another shape going around our finger here. Turn off the surface, there we go. So because what Mocha tracks isn't points, it actually tracks textures. Turn my shear, actually leave shear back on, and we'll call this one left hand index finger. And I'll just track this one forwards. And that's managed to stick with it fairly nicely. We'll say that that's tracking through perfectly. I would obviously want to check that out, but let's say it is. We have to take it out as After Effects corner pin data. So let's save this again now. Back into Silhouettefx. And let's come back into our trackers, which we are actually in here. Come into import again. Left hand finger here. So if we tried to just take out the regular sort of transform data, that actually wouldn't work. It would just completely reject what we were doing. It wouldn't even import the data for us. So let's just shift this over. I think we're on, frame 11 again. So that's frame 11. So what we can do here is we can basically get the transform data from the center point of these 4 points there. So if we just have all of those points selected that we just imported, hit average, that gives us a new tracker, which is the average of these other ones. And I think we've seen that before. So now we can come in, push this over to our left hand. Turn off visibility on that tracker there and bring that down to the bottom. And now if we stabilize over that left hand, we've now got a pretty good finger to work with. If we wanted, we actually could have just kept the planar tracker data, the corner pin tracker data for the finger itself, and that would also have been, a valid way of working. Can be a little bit less predictable, and actually, to be honest, it can also be slightly trickier to work with, especially if you've got a shape that moves around a lot. But to give us a sort of base on which to work with, that actually works out really nicely. Very solid, very easy. And I don't want to work with that one anymore. That's just to show you, so we'll just get rid of that for the moment. So just completely delete it. And we'll come back to our package here, and this wasn't quite right. So we'll just tighten that up. It's not going to be, don't want it perfect. Well, I do want it perfect, but I don't need it to be perfect, just to show you what we're going to do next, which is actually how we start to take this stuff out. So we'll add a couple of keyframes. It looks like our track wasn't perfect here. But that is going to be good enough for jazz. Cool. And we want to bring this above our package front. So take the whole package bottom above the package front. There we go. And with our little finger here, I'll turn the visibility on that now. Add for the time being. And we'll put our two packages in one layer. And we'll call this package. And we'll put our two hands in one layer. So that's the little finger and the right hand from last time. Put those in there, and then we can, there we go. Set that blend mode now to multiply, just to pick out those two elements that we're after. Cool, so I think we're ready to take these out. And we saw in the last class how we can start to render those elements out when we were looking at the 3D stuff. How we can sort of pick and choose which parts we're gonna render out. But we can also take things out as regular shape data. Now let's open up our layers again here. There we go. And if we pick all of our shapes coming down here, come to our export, we can export them out to a variety of different objects. So silhouette shapes, shake and nuke scripts, for GMAR shapes for the Autodesk software. And we're going to take a look at nuke in this case. We've got two different ways of taking these out, either as nuke 6.2 plus shapes or as nuke shapes, which is for 6.1 and below. We'll take a look at both of these, but let's start with 6.2 and let's call this, actually we'll just call this one hands nuke 6.2 001. And that's taking that out as a nuke script. We'll also take out our package here, and we'll take this one out. We'll export this one out as just regular nuke shapes. So we will call this one package nuke 61001. Cool. So let's pop into nuke now and see what the difference between those two actually are. All right, so here we are in nuke now. I've just got my footage connected to a viewer, and let's get in that data. So because Silhouettefx has taken it out as a script, we're going to just import script here, and let's look first at the hands. Let's take that in. Before we connect it too far, let's just set this up to our second viewer here, just to make sure that we do have our hands. They just aren't animating. All right, so why aren't they animating there? Now, if I bring up the hands, this is the one we exported out as a 6.2 script. So it's coming as a roto paint node, and we've got all of our layers nested as we had them before. But that doesn't stop the fact that we have no animation going on. And there's a simple reason for this. If we come to my curve editor here, actually let's take this look at this in the dope sheet. We can see actually we do have some keyframes over here and that all the way down at frame 0 here. So obviously we've got a frame offset problem. We can go in and sort of do and drag sort of make small changes just by dragging and dropping, as we've got here. So we can offset them in that way using the dope sheet. Also in the curve editor, we could also have done it in there. But actually, that doesn't fix the sort of bigger problem that we have of if we've got loads of stuff, loads of shapes coming through. We're going to have to go in and offset that all the time. There's got to be an easier way, and obviously there is. Let's just get rid of this here and come back into Silhouettefx. And this is where we come up to our session settings here. And we have our start frame. So this is the information that's going to be able to quickly link back to the frame sequence that we're working on. So we take a look at our project here. Our frame range is 90527. So if I come to my settings here, set this up to start frame as 90527. Hit OK on that. We're getting a new range coming in now. So if let's take out all of these shapes here. No, I don't want to do that, obviously, because I want to do them one at a time, or one section at a time, and export these out again. So Nuke 6.2. This was the hands. Let's just go and replace these ones. Same with the package here. Export out Nuke shapes. Package, replace them, and let's pop back into Nuke now and do exactly the same things we did before. So import script, Nuke hands there, and just so that we can see that now. There we go. So our animation is perfectly lining up. And I still expand that out just a tiny wee bit. And I can see I actually didn't have my my top finger there either. So let's come back and export that out. The reason is I hadn't actually selected those shapes. There we go. So let's try that one more time. Nuke 6.2 hands. Cool. And we'll just lock that back for the moment being. Send that back and forth. Cool. All right. So we actually haven't actually linked these in any way yet. So how do we come in and check just to make sure that everything's come in as we need it to? Well, let's just break that up a second. The easiest way is just to add another few nodes here. We're going to come in to our channel, go to copy. I'm going to have the A input coming from the roto, B input coming from the main footage. Add a merge layer. And we'll give it something to merge over. So we'll just come in, we'll just do a constant color for the moment being. We'll have we'll take a fairly neutral-ish color, not go too crazy. And we also need to pre-multiply in there somewhere actually. Let's so back to merge, pre-mult there. Cool. And we now have our little channels all hooked up. So there are some caveats that I actually want to go through. Let's go back into the Roto Paint node and just open this up again. Because we've got a load of stuff that does come through and does come through as keyframed. So if I come in and just click on any of these here, you can see that we do have keyframes being shown on the timeline down here. If I come to my top joint up here, you can see I've also got fewer keyframes done on that one. You'll also notice that we've actually got two different types of shape come in as well. We've got our B-spline coming in for the little finger, but our X-splines have been converted into Bezier shapes. So if you do want to keep B-splines when you go into Nuke, you're best off working with B-splines right from the get-go in Silhouette, and obviously setting up your default primitive type to B-spline as well. Because X-splines will get converted, and Beziers will obviously come through as Beziers. In Nuke, you actually can convert your B-spline to a Bezier, but you can't do the opposites. You can't convert a Bezier into a B-spline. So that's the first thing to be aware of. Opacity is also keyframed in. So you can see here the opacity goes from 0 to 1 up here. We do have a little bit of interesting stuff which goes through with the motion blur here, though, because motion blur also gets taken in. But let's zoom in a little bit here. Maybe not quite as much. I need to actually see where I'm going. There we go. Let's take us back down here. Yeah, so motion blur does also get taken in as well. So we take a look at the shape here. We do have motion blur, and we can control the quality, the shutter and the shutter offsets, whether it's centered, comes in at the start or at the end. So there it does kind of pop through, but at the expense of messing up the rest of the motion blur we had going on there. So we can, if you want to, we can set it to custom here, and basically keyframe that in. So set a key to -1. And take that back to 0. Cool. And when it actually comes to the amount of motion blur, we can use the motion blur and the shutter here to determine just how far that actually goes. So the shutter is going to be determining up the distance, the amount, and the motion blur here is actually really it's the quality of the samples. So you can see really low, few samples, and then higher up we get more. So this is the equivalent. If we take a look over there, back in Silhouettefx, this is the equivalent of, those three are the equivalent of the shutter angle, shutter phase, and samples. So samples being motion blur, shutter angle being shutter, and shutter phase being the shutter offset here. So those are basically the equivalents there. So all in all, we actually get a whole load of data coming through. So include, down to actually the colours of the shapes. Those are matching what we have in here as well. You might notice that at the moment our layer order is inverted here. This is actually a bug in the Silhouettefx software that was fixed in 4.2. So the layer order actually comes in correctly from 4.2 onwards. So that was a brief look at the 6.2 importer. So the big difference, let's come in and do another insert node. Let's just disconnect that for a second. And let's come in and import that other script again now. So that would be the package here. So this was just as the regular nuke shape. And this is coming through. Let's just show you. This is actually still working. Let's close up my roto paint node there just to get rid of the overlays. Cool. So this is still working here as a package, but we take a look at that. We actually have to come in and actually hit S in here to show what is going on inside this node, because it comes in as a group. So we've got our package front, our package bottom. So we've got our two shapes, which are our Bezier shapes, and a merge node coming in. In fact, even these package fronts here, because they're also groups, we can pop into those as well. So this is an old Bezier node. So all of the shapes have been converted to Bezier. And we don't have access to any of the keyframes because basically the whole animation has been baked down now. So if we need to make any changes, we're best off making those back in Silhouettefx and then re-importing. Otherwise, you're in for a sort of nightmare of coming in and tweaking all the keyframes up. You know, this is much more limited and much more sort of old school than the 6.2 importer is, because all the fun and funky stuff like our proper sort of group order, or the sort of easily accessible hierarchy that we built up in Silhouettefx, that's all gone now and being replaced by this sort of baked down series of shapes. Cool. So before we leave Nuke completely, there's one other thing I just want to show you as well, and it's something that hadn't come up in this one here, but has come up in a previous class, and that's the idea of open shapes. So I've got a B-spline here, open shape. The only way that we can export open shapes is as silhouette shapes, and we can use the After Effects importer to import silhouette shapes here, but we can't use these open shapes in Nuke or any of the other export options here. So where we were coming in and doing lots of fine hair work with the open shapes, these will have to be rendered out to a separate matte file rather than exported out as shapes. Now, the final thing I want to look at is, again, revisiting a project that we looked at previously, and that's our Power Mats project here. Because I had a little question about, how we were to best export this out. If I come to my settings here, let's come over to it and add the composite here. So when it comes to outputting this channel, we can export it just as a regular. Hang on a sec. Let's just turn this off. Yeah, we can export this out just as a regular render active node. Go to our output, render that active node out. Come to our TIFF. Do color plus alpha here. We'll give this a name. Power Mat. Plus alpha. So we can take this out just as an element that we can composite in later, so taking it out as a TIFF file or another format that supports embedded alpha channels. We can do it that way, or alternately, if we haven't used any of the we do have actually some color estimation here in the power mat node, which takes out some of the background color there. If we were going to ignore that, we can also just render out the active node there. Let's take out our output here. We can just render out the alpha only channel and then use our original in the composite. But of course, that will leave in the background color elements that the power mat takes out. And if for any reason we actually wanted to put in our own background here, we can do that within the composite node. So let's come in. Let's find one of our. Let's find one of our gradients right the way back from class 2. Come in to our background here. Remember to extend the duration out. We look at our composite here. We can now render this out with our new background going on if we needed to do that for maybe just like a slap comp or something like that. Just wanted to see how it was going to, if and how it was going to work with our background there. So we can do that and then render out the output again. We'll take this out to composite. Now we take a look at this now. We can actually see that we do have our alpha still embedded in there. All we've done is replace the background. So that's cool if we take it out with the color plus alpha there with the new background coming in through the composite. Of course, we don't want the alpha channel being in there. Even hidden, we can just do color only, and that will get rid of that alpha channel. So thanks to you for joining me for SEAL 201. I hope you enjoyed it. As ever, I will be around in the forums again. So if you do have any other questions about this class, then please just let me know. My name's Ben Brownlee. Thanks again for now, and I'll see you again another time. Bye now.